everybody. In this video, we're going to be talking about basic strumming patterns. The good news is that there are few strumming patterns. There will only be 4 strumming patterns and some basic variations that we'll be going over. The very first pattern is a quarter note pattern. So what that means is that we're going to be strumming a chord on every beat. So for that, we have our metronome. I'll be clicking that on and off throughout the video. But just remember, a quarter note is a note that lasts for the duration of a beat. You play exactly on the beat, let the note, or in this case, the chord, sustain for the entire beat. I'll be using a C chord for this. It's kind of our nice, simple Acme C chord. Okay, so here's our metronome. Here we go. So again, a quarter note pattern, 4 beats. You'll notice there's an accented beat and 3 kind of subordinate beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need to think of music in this way. We need to think that music it all exists on the beat and on a regular succession of beats, and they're all going to be measured by patterns of 4, groupings of 4. Okay. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to strum. We're going to strum with a downstroke. That just means we're going to play the chord, strumming downward with the pick. Later on, we'll be able to create an upstroke, but right now we're playing all downstroke. I want you to play through these chords, and you're going to think of each beat, and I'll count it along with you. Make sure you also pay attention to that accented beat that's on the metronome. That's going to help. That gives us our index of the pattern, if you will. Okay, so here we go. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. Now, typically when we play that pattern, which is quarter note, so every single beat, we're playing downstroke. The next pattern, pattern 2, is a little bit different. So we're playing 8th notes, and that simply means we're playing a note that lasts the duration of half a beat. Therefore, we can have 2 notes per beat. Okay? What that's going to do is we're still going to have that same basic rhythm, right? The metronomic pulse of time. And we're going to play a chord right on the beat, but we also have a note in between each beat. The notes that land on the beat are downstroke with the chord, right? So strumming down. And the notes that are off beat, we have an upstroke. We strum upward. Okay, so downstroke on the beat, upstroke, and then off beat. Okay, so here's what that's going to sound like. First of all, with the 8th note rhythm. 2, 3, 4. There's our quarter note pulse. 2, 3, 4. But notice in the diagram, we have off beats. We count those with an and. Okay, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The numbers still line up with the beat, just like the quarter note pulse did. 3, 4, 1. See, now we're just adding So it's what we call, it's an alternating strumming pattern. Just like alternating, you're picking whenever you're playing single notes, you're playing a melody. The next pattern, and we'll get back to that one, don't worry, that's a kind of a standard pattern in American popular music. Probably the most common pattern is pattern 2. We'll come right back to that, but I want to show you the other patterns first. Next one is really a variation of the second pattern. It's one of the more common variations in which we have what we call a tied rhythm. So it ties the rhythm from or the duration of one note to the very next note. In this case, and if you look at the diagram up here, you're going to see we're going to strum, do an upstroke on the and of 2, right? That means the upstroke of beat 2. So we have 1 and 2 and. When we get to that upstroke, and that's going to sustain into the third beat. We don't play the third beat, so we don't go 1 and 2 and 3, right? We sustain, we let that upstroke of beat 2 sustain into beat 3. So that would sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, right after that we have another upstroke. So if you look at the first 3 beats, it's still 1 and 2 and 3 and, but we don't play on beat 3. We let the upstroke of beat 2 sustain into beat 3. So it sounds like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and. See that? 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, so here's what we have with the rhythm. If I can get the metronome on. Here we go. Okay. 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Notice you have 2 upstrokes in a row. It feels really weird not to play a downstroke on the third beat. It feels really weird to do that because you have the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So instead of playing a downstroke on the third beat, you have 1 and 2 and then you get your hand below after you've done the upstroke on the second, right? The and of 2. Get your hand back down so you can play the and of 3. So you're really just playing 2 upbeats in a row. The and of 2 and the and of 3. You're not playing on the third beat. Description might sound kind of funky, but let me do it one more time. You play along and you can hear with it. So 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. So the next pattern, actually the next 3 patterns, we have this kind of what I would call pattern 3, and then a variation of pattern 3, and then pattern 4. All we're really doing with that, if you take kind of the first 2 examples into account, you really have everything with those first 2 examples. Pattern 1 being quarter note, pattern 2 being eighth note. If you think about it, what you're playing for each beat, on each beat, you can either play a quarter note or an eighth note. Okay, so there can be variations. Like I said, hence the variations and the various patterns, but they're really only patterns and combinations of those 2 note types. So pattern 3, what that's doing is that's playing a quarter note on the first beat and then eighth notes on every other beat. So a quarter note beat 1, eighth notes beat 2, 3, and 4. So you're going to have 2 downstrokes in a row. So for beat 1, you're going to have 1, no upstroke, right? Just that full duration of a beat. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Okay, again, pay attention to the strumming pattern. It's down, down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay, So here it is with the metronome. Here we go. 2, 3, 4. Down, down, up, down, up, down, up. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and okay, and similar to our pattern 2 variation, which is exactly the same thing as pattern 2, just with that tied rhythm, we're going to have the same thing with pattern 3. Pattern 3 has a very common variation, and you're going to hear both really the pattern 2 variation and the pattern 3 variation. You're going to hear those very commonly played whenever it comes to a strumming acoustic guitar. So in a kind of folk guitar setting, playing in a church worship team kind of setting, they're very, very common rhythms to play. And so pattern 3 variation is just that. You're still going to have the and of 2 upstroke, right? That note sustaining into beat 3. You're just going to have the first beat is a quarter note, just like it was in the regular pattern 3. So we have 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4. It's a little tricky. You have 2 downstrokes in a row, both on the beat. 1, 2, and then you have 2 upstrokes in a row, both off beat, which would be 2 and 3 and. Okay, so we have 1, 2, both on the beat, then off beat, beat 2 and beat 3. So it's 2 and 3 and. So combine those two, it's 1, 2, and 3 and. Okay, 1, 2, and 3 and. And then we just finish it off with the 4th beat, 8th notes. Okay, so the whole thing is going to be 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Okay, a little bit tricky. Just remember those first 2 downstrokes, first 2 upstrokes, first 2 downstrokes on the beat, 1, 2. The next 2 upstrokes off the beat, and of 2, and of 3. Okay, here is our trusty metronome. Here we go. Okay. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, Okay, good. Now our pattern 4 variation. Pattern 4 is again going to be more or less a mix of pattern 1 and pattern 2. So on beats 1 and 3, we're going to have quarter notes. Beats 2 and 4 will have 8th notes. So the whole pattern is going to be 2 downstrokes in a row for beats 1, beat 2, but you have an upstroke on the and of 2. So it's down, down, up, down, down, up. Okay, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay, and if you kind of go back through the video, you'll probably have to go through this one a couple times to get through those patterns, right? And kind of work through them again. Think of the counting that I'm doing. It makes sense if you think about it, right? And you really pay close attention to where the strumming is. And you can kind of combine the two ideas of the beats and the off beats. Okay, again, on this example, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay, you're already singing, right, the quarter notes and the 8th note patterns. If you just exchange that with the strumming pattern, again, it kind of helps you work through the whole thing. Down, down, up, down, down, up. So that's 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Down, down, up, down, down, up. Okay, so let's try that one. Metronome, go. Here Here we go. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 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 okay. That might feel fast. If it feels like this tempo is a little too fast, that's okay. You just need a little bit more practice working through the patterns to understand them, to get a rhythmic understanding of them. That's 60 beats per minute. Okay, that's just like the ticking of a clock. It's exactly the same, 60 beats per minute. It's a great tempo to practice these patterns at. It's a little bit slower than you would normally find them. So for example, the pattern 2, where we're playing at 60 beats per minute, is pretty slow. Usually, and that's just that, 60 beat per minute tempo. Usually, a normal kind of tempo of a modern rock or modern pop song is gonna be a little bit faster, maybe somewhere between 100 and 120. About that tempo. So you're looking at, okay, so a lot faster. Most of these work a little bit better at that faster tempo, because that's what most of American popular music is. It's a little bit on the fast side, what we call allegro, right? A little bit faster tempo, anywhere between 100 and 120. And if we go a little bit slower than 60, it's too slow. In music, that's what we call largo. So from about 40 beats per minute to about 60 beats per minute. A little bit too slow, and you don't get a sense of a steady rhythm that you can follow. 60 is slow enough to where you can start to process it and comprehend it and think about it. And if you can do it at that tempo, you can do it really cleanly, then you start bumping up the tempo a little bit and go a little bit faster. You can get a regular metronome like the one I have here, or if you have the Guitar Tuna app on your phone, that comes with a free metronome as well with it. So I would just start practicing with this tempo and start bumping it up, maybe 5 beats per minute if you work on these strumming patterns for an hour, let's say, and then you start bumping up the tempo by maybe 5 beats per minute. So you practice a little bit every day. By the end of the week, you've bumped it up from 60 to maybe 85 or 90 beats per minute. And that's when you start really getting a feel for a lot of these rhythms. And so really just in closing, that's, I think, kind of the best way to practice these strumming patterns. All of these patterns you can also keep in mind, and I'd like you to try them in the way that I illustrated, but also try all of them with a downstroke. That's valid too. So for example, the most common pattern 2, that's the pattern that like all of American pop music is based off of, right? Regardless of genre. So the way you want to practice that is, again, with an alternating pattern, upstroke, downstroke. At this tempo, it's really easy to kind of follow along with that pattern, right? So 3, go. Okay, but we'd also practice it with a downstroke. That's just the same pattern we did before, pattern 2, but with all downstroke. We could do that with, say, the pattern 3 variation, right? Which is the more kind of, common folk guitar kind of variation, which would sound something like this, all downstroke. So why the difference? Well, there are stylistic differences. Normally on acoustic guitar, you would kind of have the alternating pattern. Some genres that use electric guitar, or could be acoustic as well, right? So some rock styles, some alternative styles. Those might require, or punk, that's another one, like requires a lot of downstroke and kind of more, aggressive strumming patterns. And then again, the other thing to keep in mind throughout all this is, and we'll get into this in our next video, really the combination of the possibility of either playing one of two rhythmic patterns over a single beat, which if you think of it, the variations of that are pretty, have pretty wide variations. They have many different variations, but either a quarter note on a beat, one or all, or some, right? Or 2 eighth notes on one beat, right? 2, right, on all beats or some beats. So there can be various patterns of that. Again, I've shown you the most common ones. There are a couple of others, but we're going to wait till our next video when we're talking about some more chord progressions and chord transitions. Okay? Enjoy.